actually one of my strengths is that I am not a lawyer. I'm not sure I would be a great lawyer. I know I love lawyers. I think they're fantastic individuals and professionals in their own right, but it wouldn't be a career path I would choose for myself. In HR, you're very much in an advisory role. And I used to get really, really frustrated when
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of But Is It Legal with me, Simon Marshall. I'm your host. I'm the founder of TBD Marketing. We are a marketing agency and we only work for law firms. And today I'm joined by the brilliant Sophie Wardell. So Sophie, can you introduce yourself? Tell us a bit about yourself and what do you do for a living?
Certainly. I am Sophie Wardell. I am the People Director for the full service law firm Higgs LLP. I think probably like a lot of HR professionals, my role is something that changes from day to day. I mean, in kind of headline terms, I'm responsible for talent acquisition, retention, people development, growth, performance management, engagement, culture, leadership, collaboration. I mean, ultimately in a law firm, you are dealing with people. So there are very few rooms that you wouldn't expect to find me in, which means, and I know it's a cliche, that literally no 2 days are the same. And at the moment, I think some of my key focuses are around the embedding of our new core values. We're looking at our development frameworks. We're also gearing up for pay reviews. So there's a lot of focus on remuneration and reward. And like a lot of HR professionals, obviously the change in government to our new Labour government, we're all sitting attentively waiting for all of the various changes that were in the Labour government's manifesto. So it's going to be, I suspect, the calm before the storm. But that's a sort of a brief overview of the role that I have.
I think it's a bit like the legal sector itself, really, isn't it, HR? Because it's like a variety of different careers under one umbrella, don't you think? It's like you can be a recruiter or you can be an engagement specialist, like you said, all those things you just mentioned.
Absolutely. And you have to wear many hats, and you also have to know that quite often those things that don't have a home will probably find their way to you. And it's a real skill in HR to be able to have that dexterity, to be able to move those hats around as often as possible. And obviously, through the pandemic, what I definitely saw is HR professionals being more included in some of those strategic decisions, rather than simply being, and I use this phrase a lot, the tea and sympathy department. So in recent years as well, I think you find HR at the forefront of all things well-being and wellness. And another sort of hot topic at the moment is around neurodiversity, and you are expected to just know everything there is to know and how to build that into the infrastructure of your business. So it is never dull. But you are often thinking on your feet, and being able to communicate, being able to act empathetically are just absolute musts if you're working in this profession, particularly when you're working with lawyers.
I've worked with HR professionals, of course, over those 25 years of working in marketing and comms teams at law firms as well. And it seems to me that many of you treat it like teachers would, like a bit of a calling as well. Do you know what I mean? That's the reason so much gets asked of those people, is because actually it is, you want to make a material difference to the lives of the people that are in the organisation as well.
You do, and it's a rare day that if you're interviewing, and certainly in the time that I've interviewed to create teams, that when you ask someone why they want to do it and why they want to get involved in the profession, it will always be people focused. But it's a blessing and a curse, because you may get the joy and the thrill of all of those positive life moments that people want to share with you, and be that having their first child or a promotion, all of those things, you get that real human contact, but you also then have to make extremely difficult decisions, and being able to make those decisions and make people feel valued and heard in the process can be challenging. And it's also quite difficult when you work in HR to have really, really close friendships, because you never know at what point you might have to disappoint somebody or be involved in the decisions that don't quite lead them to where they want to get to. And it's also the area of the business, a bit like finance, where you have to have that absolute confidentiality. You are there to ensure there is trust.
What made you, I mean, you're an HR professional. Do you have a life before the legal sector, working in HR?
I did. It was a very long time ago though. So I first cut my teeth in recruitment. I mean, prior to that, I classically did, various jobs at the weekend, but I cut my teeth in recruitment, and then I worked in financial services and HR. And I think it's interesting. Lawyers, I think, are very lucky because there is a path for them. They know they want to largely work in the law, in a law firm, private practice. But when I think of the people within law firms that are not lawyers, please never call us non-lawyers or non-fee earners, by the way. But when I think of those people, they've actually made a conscious decision to work in the law. And that's, I actually ask myself some days why I decided to do that. But there is something really enjoyable in supporting other people with their vocation. There's something about the intellectual rigor, for sure. The fact that you're working with people who take an enormous amount of pride in the work that you do, so you can really see the benefits that you can bring to them. And I find it hard to imagine working in a different sector, because I have so enjoyed the journey that I have been on, but also how incestuous it is. I think it is absolutely astonishing how people disappear out of one firm and then come back into another firm, which is why I always say never to burn your bridges, because truly I've seen people pop up in many businesses, and it's a very small world ultimately.
Do you think it's becoming easier or harder to navigate a career, because you've been in a couple of different firms now? Is it becoming easier or harder to navigate a career through the legal sector? Maybe that has got a different answer for lawyers versus those of us who are business professionals instead.
I think probably for the sort of business professionals or the central teams or whatever people want to call them, I think it's become a bit easier because I think that their value is recognized in a way that perhaps it wasn't. There was a very much a kind of more of a command and control. You are in service of the lawyers. And I think that narrative has switched to you are now enabling the lawyers. And I think that value is seen. Do I think that the law is becoming easier or harder to navigate? I think it's both. I think it's easier in some ways because barriers have started to come down. I think it's easier for people to get opportunities in the law in a way that they couldn't before. There's been a diversification of roles, and so you can get a foot in the door in lots of different ways, and all of that is good. I think that law firms have also responded to this idea that actually people want to enjoy their work as well. They want to get more from being a lawyer than just the lawyering. They want to have that sort of flexibility. They want to be able to pursue different opportunities. And I can see a lot of creativity coming through in the law. But that said, I think the expectations that are placed on the lawyer are massive. We expect them to be really, really good at business development, really, really good at the commercial awareness, the financial hygiene, and also be really good at social media and networking, and do the lawyering and be technically able and be really fantastic managers and supervisors. And I think that that's quite hard because I think previously you would have lawyers with a one-to-one relationship with the secretary, and they could just focus on the lawyering, but that model it doesn't exist now. And so that I think that probably a lot of lawyers would say there's just so much more expected of me, and that sometimes is difficult, particularly when you've got multiple generations where people's strengths will be different. And I think there's an awful lot that we don't leverage. The learning of how it used to be and how it is now, and I think that those divisions are real areas for law firms to really explore, so that there is that flow of learning and knowledge between the different people within the organisation.
I've been wondering for a while now, of course, it rode back a bit from the kind of strictures of those contribution frameworks. You need to be good at all 6 things, and whether or not we'll end up moneyballing things the way that other industries have done, and say, well, look, it's okay to have somebody who is a rainmaker without the negative connotations of that, and we'll have some people who are technically gifted lawyers who don't enjoy spending too much time out networking and things like that. And I wonder whether, and I've seen it in teams, right? At some firms I've been at, that's how they structure their teams, so when they don't have this kind of idea of a template lawyer, as it were, as well. Any thoughts on whether we might see a kind of a road back towards that?
I think it's heading that. I do definitely think it's heading that way. But the conversations I often have with lawyers is that the talk is there, and that's what we want. We want to play people to strengths, but it takes time. It's a bit like social change. It takes time to get to that place, because lawyers are used to working with precedents. They want guidelines. It's all of those parameters. And when you start to take them away, there's going to be a degree of dissonance before you reach the next evolution of what a law firm will be. And there always has to be someone who goes first. And not all law firms are going to be early adopters to some of these things.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be adopted at a team level as well. It'll be interesting to see how those like little pods of experience, taken on as teams. Tell me, if you don't mind, what's the biggest lesson that you've learned over your career, and what prompted you to learn it?
I think the biggest lesson that I have learned would be that the importance of sharing some of your I wouldn't say private life, but some of your own personal experiences with the people that you work with, to a degree that you feel safe and comfortable doing that. And I think for me, I'm in my 40s now, and I look back over my sort of 15 years in the law, but 20 years in HR. And one of the hardest experiences that I had was returning to work after a period of maternity leave, but I returned to work already expecting my second child. And it was a very difficult time. So I knew coming back into work that I would be taking some more time off on maternity leave, probably 6 months after I'd returned. And I found that a real mental hurdle. I always in my mind, I'm always working. I care about what I do, and I had this sensation that it might look like I wasn't caring enough. And when I did eventually return, I had a really wakeful child, as in my youngest son would wake every 2 hours and be up and awake from about 4:30 in the morning. And I remember probably 3 or 4 months after coming back after my second child, having going out for dinner with some of the partners, and I told one of the partners that I had been up since 4:30 in the morning, and he said, "I don't understand how you function if that's the sort of ordinary day for you." And I remember thinking, I don't know how I'm functioning, but I also can't. It was almost a moment where I thought, I can't believe I haven't told anybody that I'm actually. And the word burnt out wasn't really something that was said then, but I look back now, and I wish I could have told myself to be more honest about the experience that I was going through at that time, that genuinely operating on minimal sleep through a fog. And I understand now that my youngest son has got some special educational needs, which actually probably was the reason that he was so wakeful. And perhaps if I had been more open about those experiences, other people might have gained from what I was prepared to share, but I could have gained a much greater degree of support. And I think that's something that in my armory of knowledge, and that does sometimes just come through lived experience and age, I would always encourage people that if you are feeling something and it is hard, it is only hard because you're not sharing it. And even if you're not sharing it, it's still happening. It doesn't make it more real because you've told somebody. And I guess that would be the biggest lesson that I've learned, just professionally, that it's okay to bring in something that is happening personally for you.
It's wonderful and a really good message. I think it's something that we see a lot in Gen Z as well, isn't it? Those people who are coming through who are going to be the next generation, whose default position is to talk about those things potentially as well, and seek to have support and affect change as well. I think it's a really good thing to have that as well. I completely agree with you. I think the more that you share those kind of experiences, the more other people are able to tell you what they're dealing with, and actually you're more supported, and you can be more supportive. I think it's a quid pro quo, those two things as well. Yeah. I've seen it in some of your posts on LinkedIn as well. I'd say that's kind of, that resonates with me as to who you are, talk about those things and those challenges. So thanks for doing that. If I haven't said it before, then thank you for doing that. Who inspires you within the profession? It could be a colleague, it could be somebody outside of the firm, I don't know. But who do you look to and think, that person is just, yeah.
I'll honestly say lawyers are phenomenally busy people. So it's really difficult to say there is this one person that I find particularly inspiring. But for me, anybody who can hold down and do a phenomenally busy job and then find time to do something that lifts others up is going to be someone that will inspire me. So it could be a number of names that spring to mind. So from a social mobility perspective, people like Charlie Moore, Alice Kinder, from a sort of race and ethnicity perspective, Dr. Inez Brown, Kishma Balaji, Tamina Greaves. There are so many people that I now see who use their voices as lawyers to say, you are welcome, because it isn't just about protected characteristics. It's about genuinely telling people that it's okay to be who you are in order to be a lawyer. Because if you're doing something that is innately stressful and you're pretending to be something that you are not, and you do not feel comfortable, you are just compounding the stress that you feel. And therefore you are going to find that mental health becomes more of an issue for people. So if there are people out there that have got the awareness or the appetite to be a force for good, to genuinely enable people to feel like it's okay to be who they are when they're walking into the workplace, I think that those people should take real credit for changing the legal sector, but also for inspiring other people. And there are so many people that I have the good fortune to spend time with that do that. And each and every one of them is an inspiration.
I'll go and give some of those people to follow, the ones that haven't already had a chance to do so anyway. So thanks for naming those names. And I'll drop them in the comments for this when we issue it later on as well. So thank you. Those are great ideas. What do you wish you'd known when you were starting out that you know now?
So this is a really interesting one. In HR, you're very much in an advisory role. And I used to get really frustrated when, and I'm sure lots of HR professionals feel this, when you give advice and it just gets disregarded, or you get advice and someone says, no, I don't agree. And there's a great comparison that I often make. So you know the story of the Trojan horse. So there was a lady called Cassandra, and she was given a gift by Apollo, and that was the ability to see the future. But she spurned him, and he made it such that she had the ability to see the future, but never to be believed. And so she was the person who called out and said, I really wouldn't take that horse. I really wouldn't. And nobody believed her. And honestly, that kind of Cassandra complex is something that I think HR professionals everywhere feel. And it's something that I have to not take personally. It doesn't mean that I failed if I've given advice and it's been disregarded, or I've suggested that the course of action that we're on is going to have such and such consequences and it gets overlooked. But that is something that I did find hard in the kind of early days of my career, because I thought it reflected an inability to influence or an inability to persuade people in the right way. But actually it isn't that at all. It is just that sometimes people feel that they want to pressure test their own theory first. And there have been a number of occasions where people have said to me, we kind of wish that I'd done what you said. It doesn't, not always the case. I'm sure that there are times when I have got it wrong. I completely accept that. But that idea of that ability to see the future and not to be believed that will happen is definitely something that comes with the territory.
It resonates with me massively, I think, in the things that I do on the marketing side as well.
I'm sure it does.
Where we should spend our money, effort, energy as well. Yeah, I've always held back and reserved the right to remind people of what I suggested in the first place later on as well. I tend to use that card less as I go older in my career. You're far wiser than me, Sophie. I'm sure you don't do that. So,
I'm not very good at I told you so. I just sit there and quietly drink my tea.
There we go. I've seen also I forgot his name now, the guy who wrote Black Box Thinking, Matthew Syed, and he talks about that, about the evolution of those careers that used to have these kind of godlike figures in them, where medical professionals didn't listen to nurses, and the legal profession didn't listen to its kind of business professionals as well. And I think the medical profession is changing. You can see it when you go and experience it now. Like the first person and the point of contact isn't always a doctor. Might well be a nurse instead, and they know a lot. And I think in legal that's happening too, right? So the good news is not only are we getting older and more experienced? But I think that industry is changing within it as well, and getting better as well. But I love that Cassandra complex. We should do a post about that together. You know, like a opinion piece or something. I think.
Yeah, I like that. I'll do that.
What's your, apart from spotting the Cassandra complex, what's your superpower? What else do you do really well?
So this is a difficult one. I think everybody's innate kind of modesty makes it quite difficult to say this is my superpower. So what I will do is I'll share a piece of 360 feedback. So we did a leadership program and I received some 360 feedback, and to this day I don't know who shared this, but I suspect it probably does reflect what I consider to be my superpower. So it says, Sophie is a very clear communicator. She is calm. She inspires confidence and brings the best out in others. In my conversations with her, I always get the impression that she is in control of the ship. I would want her in my war cabinet. And that last phrase, that I would want her in my war cabinet, so on days when you sometimes have those moments where you think, can I do this, or am I doing the right thing? Hearing that, someone saying in a time of crisis, if I had to pick, she'd be in that room, that was the best piece of feedback I feel I've ever received. But I think it speaks to my calmness and my ability to communicate and to navigate difficult conversations.
I love that. Whoever it is, please can you add it to Sophie's profile on LinkedIn?
Whoever said it, thank you genuinely.
She'll have to do it herself, by the way. Well, there you go. Final question from me, because I've taken up so much of your time already. If you had decided to be a lawyer, or if you came to be a lawyer, which area of law would you practice in?
So the cliched answer would be, well, it would be an employment lawyer, because I do HR and it's just, I know all of these things already, or I work closely with them. But genuinely, I wouldn't. I know of myself. I think actually one of my strengths is that I am not a lawyer. I'm not sure I would be a great lawyer. I think I act as a good mirror for lawyers, but I don't think I could do some of the things that lawyers do, and I certainly wouldn't have had the patience to have studied for the length of time that lawyers have to study. I think that's my answer.
Cheers to those who do, right? And
yeah, absolutely.
They mean that we get to work with highly intelligent people as well, and we're perfectly happy doing what we do, working with them, right?
Absolutely. I know, I love lawyers. I think they're fantastic individuals and professionals in their own right, but it wouldn't be a career path I would choose for myself.
Not for you.
No.
That's great to hear. Listen, Sophie, thank you so much for joining us for this episode. For those who have enjoyed listening to Sophie, and that's going to be at least 99.7% of you, please could you give her a follow on LinkedIn? She's incredibly interesting, very generous with her shares, talks about our sector in a way that I think is forward thinking and positive, and something we need to have more of. And yeah, always good value for a post. And then equally, if you like this podcast, please give us a follow or a subscription, or whatever it might be, and maybe give us a like on LinkedIn, but Spotify, you can listen to it there, YouTube, etc., etc. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks.